Welcome back to the Unpopular Opinion, Becoming Popular. My name is Yana the Heretic, and we will be discussing the third gate under the archetype Harmonia. If you didn't watch my previous videos, Harmonia is the Greek goddess that unifies opposing forces. And we are under the quarter of duality, which is experiencing a lot of mishmash of yin and yang lines together. The theme is relationships and how we see ourselves within our relationships. This one in particular is called Confining in the I Ching. And we see yin, yang, yang, yin, yang, yin. So, no doubt, a lot of mishmash. This is the gate of realization or oppression, and it is filtering from September 9th through the 14th. September 9th, which was just yesterday, happens to be the 9-9 portal, which is a release on our energetic field when it comes down to karmic connections and obligations that we didn't even remember that we made. And this happens to be a gate that is harmonic to the previous gate we just discussed, gate 64. And we happen to see that the channel of abstraction, design of clarity mixed with mental activity, which is anxiety and mental pressure, is going to be present with us for a few days this transit. So we're definitely both 64 and 47. 64 is in the head, and this one is now in the ajna, our pattern recognition center, our center of PTSD and memory, and the ways that we've really applied our past and sustained the reasons why we do things, in our future based off of our experience, right? So the ajna is this mental patterning of experience. And these are the main, for me personally, the main two pressure centers. There's another pressure center in the root, but mental pressure tends to be it takes the cake, right? Because you see your thoughts coming in, and a lot of us don't know how to just shut them down. That's why we have all these meditative practices out there, or be here now, or be in the present moment and be focused on what you're doing in the present instead of thinking about what could be or what could happen. So this is specifically mental pressure that's coming through as a collage of images from our past, and we're always trying to relate what we have seen to our past, and it's based on oppression, based on the things that we feel oppressed by and the ways that we have oppressed others. And I happen to be reading something this exact week in a book that I love. It's called A Separate Reality by Castaneda. And this is specifically a quote by Don Juan in this book. I wanted to read it to you because it is absolutely spot on for this transit. All right, let's see. I promised my father that I would live to destroy his assassins. I carried that promise with me for years. Now the promise is changed. I'm no longer interested in destroying anybody. I don't hate Mexicans. I don't hate anyone. I have learned that the countless paths that one traverses in one's life are all equal. Oppressors and the oppressed meet at the end, and only one thing that prevails is that life was altogether too short for both. Today I feel sad, not because my mother and father died the way they did. I feel sad because they were Indians. They lived like Indians and died like Indians, and never knew that they were, before anything else, men. So we happen to see Don Juan here talking to Carlos, and this is an instance where Castaneda, he doesn't recall a time from his past that he made a promise to somebody, and this promise has really shaped the way he lived his entire life. This promise was so powerful that it actually stained his auric field and his energetic makeup to where it seemed like there was a black hole that was created, or there was an inability to see things clearly, to see things the way that they actually are, because these promises and these contracts that we have made, even as children, that we may have forgotten, have actually shaped our lives. And if we don't ever go back in time and really revisit these images, these memories, and understand the details of all of them, then we don't really know what and why we have this genetic pressure or imperative to shape our identity around something that no longer is a problem or no longer exists in our day-to-day life anymore. I know that in the movie Zorro, one of my favorite movies, there's this need to avenge your predecessors and to avenge, the injustices that have happened in our family. And there's this blind rage, that occurs, this righteousness and liberation that is cast upon us to be correct and to spill blood for the blood that has been spilled. And it creates this never-ending flame that passes through and eradicates all things. It's this real anguish in our hearts that, men choose to make their labels the most important thing rather than their hearts. And this pit of no mercy feeds itself forever. And, blind rage is just very much a lack of control. So Gate 47 is all about patience. It's about understanding these images from a deeper place rather than acting on them, rather than being in that lack of control, blind rage, stasis where, you burned everything down, whether if, you're in your internal mind. And this is like a negative burning, right? This isn't the same as like calcination or anything. This is like your body's mental system and your vagus nerve just like becoming so much more anxious and stressed out. So both, Gate 64 and 47 is in its potential really amazing. It's amazing to be able to see where the faults have lied in the past, and these type of people can fix the collective issues. They're here to redefine and reconstruct the past and create solutions for the future based off of historical violent and dead-end paths and forthcomings. So these people can learn and have the potential to learn from mistakes very quickly if they allow themselves, if they act from the authentic self, the one that is very calculated and hits the mark at the perfect time, right? So, and this is a historian, a philosopher, a person that appreciates the history and then can use all the pieces of the past that are have already been created by somebody else, that are wisdom, either it's newfound wisdom that fits in the modern time that creates this revolution, and whether it's somebody bringing some text back that is sacred, that means something to this time and it's meant for this time, to revisit it and bring it forth and bring those things, those skills, those beliefs forth for the revolution of modern times. So this is the potential of Gate 47. And there's so much inspiration. There's a ripple effect of inspiration here. The pressure is easier said than done to hold back, to not act on these things. Because our limbic states have already been carved, and we have to diminish those toxic ones. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and a lot of alternative practices to release those thoughts, those settings, right? So patience is everything for harmony that is lasting. I always talk about how people, have overcome things in very long relationships or very long, familial ties or friendships. You have to blank slate yourself in order to sustain a relationship with someone, because people hurt each other. This is about duality, right? So somebody is seeing your darkest states and the states of you that are really bright and enjoyable to be around. That's a part of all of us. Not all of us are enjoyable to be around all the time, and it really depends on our profile lines, like how much we're willing to give. And that in itself, the misunderstandings of your profile and your authority really is what causes this mental oppression, because a lot of the time we get bent out of shape because we don't understand each other. So this is the ability to really shape our communication and to really learn about each other, because you say things you don't want to, you don't want to hurt somebody, hopefully, right? You don't want to hurt somebody, but you end up getting frustrated, right? You end up getting frustrated even with yourself, or insecure, or, shit happens. So you oppress the other person in a way, and, sometimes you can mean it. Sometimes these are thoughts that you have, but how are you going to make them better? Because for the most part, you can't just ignore that happened. Ignorance creates this shell, whether it's on the person you oppressed or within yourself. You really don't grow from a place if you don't understand how you hurt somebody. you're going to keep doing that to the people around you, and soon enough you'll realize that you don't have a relationship or you don't have friends. And that will really shock you, hopefully, in life, and make you do fucking better. Otherwise, there is a moment where people, like non-emotionals, they don't like to be confronted, right? So they tend to treat confrontation from a place that is all gas. It's all gasoline, because they're almost shocked into this confrontation that is extremely uncomfortable. And it's not simple for either one, the emotional person or the non-emotional person. So how do we retrace those steps and make these relationships better if we were all gas and no brakes? Same thing with like projector types that really crave this one-on-one connection, that really needs to plug in to a sacral being and understand the other and live their life through the lens of other people around them. How much is a manifestor able to give, a projector? So these types of things are important to know. They're important to take note of. If you don't know the type of energy profile you are, start there. Start learning, because you may decipher something in your head and assume something in your head where you end up oppressing yourself. And it's actually not what's going on, and it's not what's happening, and you're not asking any more questions. So, misunderstandings happen, but if you're willing to communicate them, then things get better. And it's easy to make people feel the energy of scarcity or the energy of fear. That is what, we're seeing today. This day and age is this feeding off of fear, or believing that everything is scarce. So how are you going to put down the torch and really just stop feeding this violence, this blindness, this opposition for no reason, this desire to say something that really doesn't put anything great out there, isn't causing any solutions? You should have patience before you say anything, So if we're living a life just on, you hurt me this much and I hurt you this much, then we're just in the state of checks and balances. And, that's not fun to know how much other people are hurt. And like I said, it's easier said than done, but there's a time where you can put down the things that made you who you used to be and become something greater, something more focused and clear and determined. Questions of the week. We also have channels of mutation and openness and maturation. I always hate saying that word. I can't say it. Maturity is easy to say, but maturation is not. I don't know. And the channel of initiation this week. So there's a lot of potential here. But it does feel like chaos within clarity, and then chaos within clarity. So don't make any like crazy decisions on impulse this week. Questions of the week. Does it help to make collages when you have anxious energy? What pieces are intuitively coming together for you? Every hypnotizing piece of art or poetry tells a story that takes its time to recollect. What does aging like a fine wine mean to you? Do you agree that putting a lot of time towards a process makes it more valuable and palpable? Refinement of a process helps draw out much more detail in our sensory atmosphere. So you're getting those details back. Because a story is really like interesting when somebody actually has this imagery to come just into you, you know? How has waiting to be clear changed the entire course of your life? How has acting on impulse changed the entire course of your life? These aren't comfortable questions, so, just something to think about if you can, or write, How can we allow ourselves more time as a collective to seek clarity before we pull the lever that entraps our consciousness as well as others? There's always a ripple effect when there's an energy of scarcity present. How can you inspire others to put down their torch along with you? We see a lot of that happening, and there's tons of people that are trying to understand what side to be on in this duality, this quarter of duality. It's like, remember that we are all men and life is short. And just because somebody above us thinks it's a good idea to do something doesn't mean that we should jump on the boat, because there's tons of lives that we do not understand. We are not being put in these shoes. And we're saying things, there's things coming out of our mouth for no fucking reason that are just like, yeah, go ahead, like, just take out this country, or, you're not there. You don't know what's going on. These levers are being pulled by other people. And it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all. In any sense. This violence, this oppression. Sure, after violence, there usually comes a time where people try to, once they pillage your village, then they're like, oh, okay, well, you can be a part of our family now. That is a strange natural order. And it makes you really think about your consciousness and how it's been forced into something that's actually not a part of your identity at all. And maybe this rage isn't like your story at all. So use your anxiety, your mental pressure to do something that is more directly inspiring, as well as actually coming from a place that is sharp instead of just trashy. Because if you're telling people, yeah, eradicate this whole entire country, who cares? That's trashy shit. And enough for me with Gate 47. I will see you guys very shortly for the last gate in Harmonia. Thank you.